Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Alex from Mason Lifestyle. I hope you are all doing well, enjoying the summer and sewing along. Today we are going to be working on McCalls M8215. I'm actually going to be doing view B. It is a fabric hugger at 4 1/4 yards. So make sure that you get in on the sale. If you are doing the even longer length, it's almost 7 yards. So again, but great pattern. So let's get started. All right, guys. So again, I am working on McCalls M8215, and I'm going to be doing view B. Let me tell you about the pieces that we're going to need. We are going to need pattern piece number 7. This is the skirt front and back, and you're going to cut 2 on the fold. You're also going to need pattern piece number 8. This is the side front and back, and you're going to cut 4 and keep the grain lines right down the middle. You're also going to need pattern piece number 9, and this is the pocket, and you're going to cut 4. You're also going to need pattern piece number 10, and this is the bodice front, and you're going to cut that on the fold. You're going to need pattern piece number 11, and this is the bodice back. You're going to cut 1 on the fold. You're also going to need pattern piece number 12, and this is the neck band, and you're going to cut 1. You're also going to need pattern piece number 14, and this is the sash, and you're going to cut 2. And then you also have pattern piece number 13, and this is the armband hole, and you are going to cut 2. Also, this pattern has 3 different size ranges, and I have the middle size range, but for some reason my armband and also my my band around the neck has the bigger pattern range printed on it. So I may have to play a little bit with the length to see if this is a typo, or perhaps if this is the actual measurements, or if they gave me the wrong piece. But again, we're gonna play with that. So go ahead and mark all your notches, mark your dots, circles, cut your fabric, and let's get started. All right, guys, so I went ahead and cut my pattern. So the first thing that the pattern is asking us to grab piece 10 and 11, and that's the bodice front and back, and go ahead and attach it at the shoulders and also at the sides with the 5/8 inch seam allowance. I like to stabilize my shoulders and all my knits. They just tend to stretch, so I just get this little stabilizer. You can do elastic, clear elastic if you wanted to, but I just put it there, and I'm going to kind of clip those ends. But once you stitch in your seam allowance, that has a little bit more support on those shoulders. The pattern does not call for that, but I just like to do that again in all of my knits. So I do it. They last me a little longer. And I know that, for example, this dress, I'll be wearing this dress quite a bit until there is no more summer to be had. And even if there's no more summer to be had, I can always throw a jacket over it and keep going. So go ahead and stabilize those shoulders. If you don't have this, you can also use double satin ribbon. So that also works. And again, on the sides, make sure that you match your notches. So go ahead and also pin the sides and go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, something important that I wanted to mention. When I start any seam with knits, I just put a piece of tissue paper right under my fabric, and then I just keep stitching and I just rip it afterwards. Remember, you're working with knits, so you need a narrow zigzag stitch to sew with any knits. If not, your seams are going to pop eventually. May not be happening at the right away, but it will happen. So make sure that you have a narrow zigzag stitch, and then you also have a ballpoint or jersey needle on your sewing machine. Super important. All right, guys, so I went ahead and stitched my bodice, and I also finished my seams. But before you do any of that, make sure that you try your bodice on. See if you like it, see if it needs to be tightened anywhere or let out, whichever. So once you do that, and again, these are knits, they don't unravel, but I like to serge my my knits. They just look cleaner and nicer. So next thing that the pattern is asking us is to do a stay stitching all the way around the neckline. It's also going to ask us to stay stitch around the armholes later on, so I went ahead and did that. And again, stay stitching is to stitch 1/2 inch away from the raw edge, and you want to make sure you do that so your fabric does not stretch anymore on you, since it's cut round. So you want to make sure that you do that. So now that you have that, you're going to put this away for the moment. You're going to grab piece number 12. That is your neckband. And remember how I told you that mine is a little long because the measurements in the pattern are a little odd. So we'll see how this works out. So go ahead and with right sides together, go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so I went ahead and stitched my neckband, right? 5/8 inch seam allowance, and then I measured the front. So 1/2 of my neckband is the front. So I pinned it there, and then I also pinned that seam towards the middle and the back. Then I went and matched my notches in the center front of the bodice. There's one on the right and left sides. And then you also have some triangles on your pattern pieces for the neckband. And that means your shoulder seam. That's what that means, those triangles. So you have 1 and 2. I'm going to have to stretch my neckband ever so slightly as I'm stitching. So keep in mind you have to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and stitch 3/8 inch away from the raw edge. Don't forget to use a zigzag, narrow zigzag stitch. So go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so I went ahead and put my neckband in. I trimmed it a little and I also serged it. So now the pattern asks you to go ahead and edge stitch on the right side, and you want to do that because your neckband, this seam allowance, is going to kind of like move and roll a little. So you want to make sure that you stay that stays in, it's not rolling, that it looks nice. So now you are going to do the same thing that we did for the neckband for the armholes. So we're going to do the same thing that we did for the neckband for the armholes. So again, you're going to grab your 2 pieces, number 13. There's your notch. I am hoping that I have good luck with these because again, remember there's a typo on the pattern. So I'm hoping that that is the case with the armhole bands too. So again, go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end, and do that for both neckbands. That is piece number 13. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so again, I stitched my armholes bands, and now that I confirmed that that is the right size, I am going to cut this seam allowance because it looks like this seam allowance is going to go right under my arm. I am going to try to press this open as much as possible, and then I'm going to fold, right? Okay, I fold, and you can always baste this, both your armholes and your neckband if you wanted to, but I'm not going to. There's a notch right there, but really what I'm looking for is what is the half of this armband, and I just want to make sure that I have the half. So it looks like that is the half, and lo and behold, look where the half, there is the triangle dot for the shoulder seam. So again, right sides together, start at the bottom, right? Start at the bottom with that seam under your arms, and then you have this notch. So you may have to stretch your band ever so slightly to get to that notch, right? And then I'm going to grab that other piece which marks my seam for my shoulders and pin it right there. So again, just like we did with the neckband, I'm going to have to stretch some things around to make this all fit. And usually what I like to do is just eyeball it a little and try to put a pin where it goes, right? Like, okay, right there, maybe the halfway point. And I know that I'm gonna have to stretch that. Right there. And I know I'm going to have to also stretch that, or perhaps move this just a little more, right? And then put this. See, you're going to have to play with this just a little, just so you don't, not stretching just in one spot. You want to make sure that it's all even all the way around. And like I said, you can baste this together, but since I didn't know what was going on with the length of these neckbands and armbands, I couldn't do that. But again, measure where's your halfway point. It's right there. So you're going to have to stretch this right there. And you are going to stitch just like we did for the neckband, 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. And once we do both of those, I'm going to go ahead and edge stitch both the neckband and also the armbands. So go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so I did my two bands on my arms, and then I also took out any stay stitching that I saw that was around. I just kind of grabbed 5-10 minutes and just took it out with my seam ripper, and then I also did some edge stitch around both the neckband and also the armholes, just because you want to make sure that those bands stay towards the inside and they don't start rotating on you. And I also finished my seams. So now we are going to go ahead and put this off to the side, and we are going to grab 2 pieces number 8 and 1 piece number 7, and we are going to do our skirt front. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we are going to do the skirt front. So you are going to grab piece number 7, and that is the middle piece, and then the side pieces are pieces number 8. You are going to pin, right? But you want to make sure that on one of the pieces, number 8, that there is a slit. So I put 2 pins here, and that'll tell me where to stop stitching, because we want to do a slit on just on one side. And then the other piece, number 8, on the other side of the skirt is going to be stitched all the way down. So go ahead and pin, again, piece number 7 in the middle, pieces number 8 on the sides. And you are going to see where the dot is on your skirt pattern and put 2 pins so you know where to stop. So go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start all the way to the end. Go ahead and do that for your skirt front. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so I got my skirt front back done, and I left a gap for the slit, and I'm going to put this off to the side. And I am now going to do the same thing. Piece number 7 in the middle and piece number 8 on the sides. However, since this is the back, you don't want any gaps, any slits or anything like that. So go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and all the way to the end. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we got our skirt front and our skirt back all done, serged, ironed, pressed, whatever. So now we're going to grab our pockets, and I went ahead and serged mine. Again, you don't have to do any of this because it is, it's a knit, so it's not going to unravel, but just call me crazy. I just want to do that. So I did. So go ahead and pin your pocket to the front of your skirt sides, and there's a notch right here, so go ahead and do that. And then I want you to do that on both sides of both the skirt front and the skirt back. So I want you to stitch 3/8 inch seam allowance. Again, 3/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end. So go ahead and do that for all pocket pieces, and that is piece number 9. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we went ahead and stitched our pockets, right? And I also did some understitching just because I want the pocket to stay inside the pocket and not out. But now we are going to attach the skirt front to the skirt back. So again, with right sides together, you are going to match these pockets as best as you can. And of course, match your notches. Right, there's one. And I want you to do this both on the front and on the back of your skirts, front and back, remember, because you're attaching both sides. So now that that's pinned, see, make sure that it's all matching. So you have a dot right here. So I want you to stitch straight from the raw edge at the top to the dot and back stitch. And then I want you to stitch from this edge from the pocket 5/8 of an inch all the way around, and then I want you to stop at this other dot, pivot, and then keep going all the way down your skirt. Again, 5/8 inch seam allowance. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end, and I want you to do that for both sides so you can attach your skirt front to your skirt back. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so I attached my skirt front to my skirt back. Remember, I told you to go ahead and stitch from the raw edge to the first dot and then go all the way around, pivot here. But remember, you also have to stitch from this second dot all the way down. And that is so you can get your pocket in and out. Also clip into your seam allowance and make sure that you can stitch or baste your dot towards the front of the skirt. So go ahead and do that for both pockets. All right, guys, so we went ahead and basted our pockets to the front, and now we are going to attach the bodice to the bodice to the skirt. So again, with right sides together, you are going to see how's the easiest way to do this. Probably stick it all in, right? And you have some notches at the front of your bodice. So there's one right here. So I want to pin. And you have another notch right here. And you want to pin. And then you want to match your side seams. There's one right. So pin all the way around, and you are going to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. And then once you're done doing that, attaching the bodice to the skirt, we are going to form a casing for an elastic. I don't know if you've noticed, but your skirt is starting to get heavy. So you definitely want to have some sort of elastic that it can at least support some of the weight of your skirt, especially if you are doing the one that is a maxi length. It is a lot of fabric. So you definitely want to do a casing for an elastic. I believe it calls for 3/8. You can do 3/8, you can do 1/2 inch. I may even do 1/2 inch. It's a lot of fabric. But if you do a larger elastic, remember, then you have to do a bigger gap to put in your elastic. So go ahead and stitch all the way around, 5/8 inch. Don't forget the back stitch at the start and at the end, and then we're going to do a casing for an elastic. Go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so we attached the bodice to the skirt, and I serged my raw edge, and then I told you that we are going to do a casing because there is an elastic by the waist, because obviously there is a lot of fabric and the dress just gets a little heavy, so it's good to have an elastic. So you have 5/8 of an inch, and then you have 1/4 of an inch. Obviously you need to leave a gap so you can get your elastic to go through. Let me show you, right? You need to leave an opening. And then I grab a bodkin and I just pulled my fabric or my elastic through, and then make sure that your elastic, nothing is turning inside, and that when you stitch it, it's not stitched like this, right? You want to stitch it, I need to cut this, but you need to stitch one on top of the other. Once you do this, you are going to close your opening on this side. Obviously, again, you need to make sure that you stitch your elastic on this side, and then you can close it. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so I went ahead and put in my elastic, and then I enclosed my opening. Of course, I joined my elastic, then closed my opening. So all we have now, we have to close that slit on the front, and the pattern calls for narrow hem, which would be turn and then turn again. I serged my opening, so all I'm going to do is just stitch all the way to the where it stops and then pivot, do like 5 or 6 stitches, pivot again, and then come down, and then I'm going to do my hem. So I am going to turn this 1.25 inches, and then I'm going to turn 1/4 in. So that'll be my hem. So you have that. Once you get that done, you're going to grab your sash pieces, which are piece number 14. There's 2 of them. And you're going to stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that now. All right, guys, so I went ahead and stitched my 2 sash pieces together. That is piece number 14. So now with right sides together, I'm going to fold. And we are going to stitch this, but I am going to leave an opening so I can turn it. Okay guys, so go ahead and stitch 5/8 inch seam allowance, start at this end, pivot all the way down, stop, start again, and keep going all the way down the sash. And then once you are done, just turn this over. All right guys, go ahead and do that now. All right guys, so now you turn your sash and you go ahead and you slip stitch and you're all done. I hope you like this sew along. All right guys, I hope you enjoyed that sew along. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, ring the bell, and give it a thumbs up. Till next time, bye.